Hello and welcome into the latest episode of the Jefferson Madrigs podcast, the pod on a mission to normalise 8-team fantasy leagues. I'm Pete and I'm joined by the energetic duo of Ian and H. Good evening, gents.
Evening, lads.
Evening.
How are we?
Yeah, good. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute, hasn't it? Yeah.
I was just going to say, any of our regular listeners will know that about a month ago, we said we were going to start going through all of the divisions and give everyone a full summary of what's going on. And since then, we haven't put a podcast out. So we apologise. There's been a lot going on. We've had contract negotiations with our investors. And now that that's all settled, we can move on to the AFC North. So before we start...
It was all me threatening to sit the season out, wasn't it?
They what, sorry?
I was threatening to sit the season out on my contract, yeah.
Yeah, we had to get everyone's contracts.
He wasn't happy on the franchise tag, was he? So
no, we had to get everyone's contracts agreed. Yeah. And everything sorted. So we are on this episode. In the last episode, we went through the AFC South, and this episode we are going to go out through the AFC North. 15 minutes on each team, and we will start with the winners of the AFC North last year, the Baltimore Ravens, who, as I've just said, they finished first in the division. They went 13-4. They were the number one seed. They first division title since 2019, beat the Texans in the divisional round, but lost to the Chiefs in the conference game 17-10. In 2024, they are forecasted, or the bookies have got them at 11.5 wins, which seems pretty high. Favourites for the division at 5-4. Significant ins: Derrick Henry and Devontae Walker in the fourth round. Outs: Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Although when you bring in Derrick Henry in, I don't think Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins will be massive misses. The early ADPs, according to Sleeper, Lamar is the QB4. Derrick Henry is RB11. Zay Flowers, I was going to call him Jay Flowers then. I don't know where that came from. Zay Flowers is the wide receiver 26, or is the wide receiver 26. Bateman's the wide receiver 81, and Andrews is tight end 4. Ian, this is your division, so do you want to kick us off with your thoughts on the Ravens?
I think they are going to have another good year this year. They've done nothing but strengthen, especially in the running back department. I think Derrick Henry going there, obviously he's more trustworthy than Gus Bus and J.K. Dobbins. He's only had one big injury in his career, whereas, J.K. Dobbins is permanently injured. And I think Derrick Henry being a major threat is going to open more rushing for Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be genuinely dangerous this season.
Yeah, I can't argue with that, to be honest. I think they're all set up. I think the only thing stopping them, and this is the same with every team, is injuries. I think if Derrick Henry, we can talk about how Derrick Henry doesn't get injured, but he is getting older. In running back terms, he's on the back end. He's right at the back end of his career.
Yeah, that doesn't mean he's got a couple of years left at the elite level.
That doesn't mean he's going to drop off, but history would suggest at some point he's going to start dropping off. But and Lamar had an MVP season, but it's the first time in several years he's managed to stay fit. So, but that could be it now. He could stay fit for the rest of his career or the next few years. And I think if he does, they're the right favourites for the division, I think.
Yeah, and I think Derrick Henry helps everyone else, to be honest, because I think what's going to happen is what you got when he was at the Titans, where everyone had just filled the box trying to stop the run. And if you can't stop Derrick Henry running, that opens lanes for Lamar Jackson to run. If he's going to throw it, there's extra money in the box, which leaves Andrews open and Zay Flowers open, and God forbid, Bateman, if we're desperate. I think Derrick Henry going there helps everyone else.
When you did your season review or preview where you predicted every game, how did you have the Ravens finishing?
Same as last year, 13-4.
Winning the Super Bowl?
No, I've got them losing it to the 49ers.
Oh, okay. Ian predicts the Ravens are going to go to the Super Bowl. H?
I actually agree. I think the Ravens, the only criticism we probably had of the Ravens last year was they at times looked a bit poor in the run. I think I quite like Devontae Walker, who's the rookie. If he can get going early doors, he gives Lamar a bit more of an option. Because I think realistically last year in the air, we probably had Zay Flowers. He didn't really have Andrews for a great deal. I think Andrews missed 6 games, which brought in Isaiah Likely. If Devontae Walker is anything like he was for is it North Carolina, South Carolina? Is that North Carolina? Like I didn't feel like it could be a nice little weapon for him. I kind of agree with everything Ian said, which is a bit annoying, really. I'd like to disagree and argue with him, but I don't. I know, like obviously when Ian did his power rankings, he had the Ravens above the Chiefs, which I'll be honest, I disagree with because the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. That makes them, in my eyes, the best team. But I think what the Ravens have done is only strengthen. And yeah, I mean, they lose a little bit on defense, but it's one of them where they're kind of that strong that I don't think it even affects them too much.
They're one of those teams that they always seem to make it work on defense as well. Like by the middle of the year, they could lose half their defense, and by the middle of the year, players they've drafted or players they've found in free agency would have, or people they just pull in off the street will suddenly be playing at a Pro Bowl level, and they'll work it out with one of those defenses. I think that the only from especially from a fantasy point of view, the only downside, and I know you just mentioned Devontae Walker, I think they've got the best tight end room in the league with Andrews and Likely. I think wide receiver wise, I'm not sold on Flowers. I'm not buying into Bateman in any way, shape, or form. So I do think they need those tight ends to be good, and they need Derrick Henry to be good because I don't think they get an awful lot from the receivers.
Sorry, Ian, go on, mate.
No, go on, H. You go first, mate.
See, I've looked at the Ravens wide receiver room. I'm completely out on Bateman. I will not draft him. And if I'm going to take a Ravens wide receiver of the sort of the wide receiver 2-3, I'm going to take my chance on Walker. I actually picked him up in our dynasty as one of my players in that he potentially could develop into quite a nice player. I'm probably a little bit more in on Zay Flowers because I saw enough of him in his rookie year to go, there's something about him. So I would take a risk on him, but it depends in terms of like your ADP, who's on the board more who's on the board than anything. Because he is a wide receiver 1 or potentially target number 1, depending on what condition Mark Andrews is. But I mean, I think it sums it up when your quarterback and your tight end are both 4 in the league at ADP.
Yeah,
it shows the talent that they actually have there. I think if I remember right, is Zay Flowers is behind Tank Dell, isn't he? In ADP.
Yeah.
So for me, why I understand the hype around Tank Dell. I think he had a fantastic season, but he's with Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. I would and I'm a Texans fan saying this, I'd rather take a punt on Zay Flowers because he is a wide receiver 1 over a wide receiver 3, which I think is logically it's kind of a clever move.
No, I totally agree with that part. Yeah, absolutely. You'd rather have wide receiver 1.
Well, hang on a minute, right? I know we've not done this for a while, but this isn't how this works. You two being all friendly. Oh, you go first. You go first. Yeah, I agree with you. What's going on?
We've missed each other. We're just trying to be nice for 10 minutes.
It's freaking me out.
Just wait till we start talking about the Bengals and we'll fall out then.
It's freaking me out, and I can imagine it's freaking out everybody who's listening. So can we get a little bit more aggressive with each other? Would be good.
Well, we've definitely got the Steelers to come, and the Bengals. So that'll cause arguments.
What were you going to add?
We'll get there, but you can't deny H's point there. Really, you would rather have Zay Flowers at his ADP than Tank Dell. I don't know. I don't know which of the Texans offense that I want. I'm still not fully out on Stephon Diggs, but he's not going to have. We're now talking about the Texans in an AFC North pod, but Stephon Diggs isn't going to have the volume that he had from Josh Allen, so he's not going to be as relevant but he's still class, and he's still probably better than Tank Dell. Tank Dell's in his second year, still got a lot to learn. There's no way Tank Dell's going in as wide receiver 1.
No, I see your point, H. I think my only argument would be that you're forgetting about Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is the first target for Lamar on pretty much every play when he's fit. So it'd be interesting. I haven't done this work. It'd be interesting to see how Zay Flowers did in the games where he played with Mark Andrews. I should have looked at that before we started. But I just, there's something about Zay Flowers that I sort of watched him and there was flashes last year, but he feels like the sort of player that if you own him in your fantasy team, he's just going to frustrate you. Like it feels like it should be a big game. You see a couple of flashes and you get to the end and he's got 3 catches for 40 yards. And you're like, well, hang on. I saw all of that and I only watched the highlights. Like, where was it? But
he might be one of those players where every week you're like, do I put him in? Do I leave him on the bench? And then you leave him on the bench and he goes off, and then the next week you put him in and he does nothing.
Like
I'd rather have him.
If he's going to be your wide receiver 4 on a team, wide receiver 3-4, it's a good move. But I'll be honest with you, the only Ravens players that I would say are on a list of players that I would definitely want is Lamar and Derrick Henry, because I think Derrick Henry and Lamar, purely because of the rushing, is going to take more away from Zay Flowers, Devontae Walker, Mark Andrews, because we've seen it with Lamar. He is a running quarterback. He's a running back that can throw really well. If you want, like, you see those arguments all the time. I think he's a phenomenal quarterback. And I think having a run game with him, it makes him even stronger, which I think takes away the fact that I think, was it last year? Was it one of his better throwing seasons, and he still didn't reach 4,000 yards? Like, he's never going to throw the ball that much.
He doesn't need to, though, does he?
I think if you're going to stack 2 Ravens players, I'd rather stack Lamar with Andrews than Lamar and Derrick Henry.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have both of those in my team.
No, in terms of like, I'm not going to select them both, but if I'm looking at players that I would select, it would be them. I wouldn't select both purely because I don't really do it that much. I'm not like Pete who loves a quarterback and he loves a Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray shindig this year, but I'm not someone that overly stacks that much, because I feel like if one has a bad game, they're both having a bad game. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but
I just think it's slightly different, though. I'm a bit of a weirdo.
They both have a good game, don't they?
Yeah, true.
So,
I just feel like with the Ravens, there's just not enough there in wide receiver. Like, there's a reason why their ADP for what's wide receiver 250 odd Bateman?
81
says it all. It all.
He's 81, and I've done a few best ball mocks or best ball leagues on DraftKings, and to say few, I think I'm up to about 30 now. I can assure you Bateman isn't in any of them. His ADP's down there. We're about to get into a few charity best balls that we're involved in. He won't be on any of my rosters. I don't know what it is with him, but even at like 80, 90, I still don't even think it's worth a punt. I don't know what it is. And they were really talking about.
I can promise you now. It's pre-season, isn't it? The pre-season high. But I can promise you now that in the 8-9 years I've been doing fantasy football, not once have I had Rashad Bateman in any of my teams.
It's only going into year 3, isn't he?
Yeah, it's a bit harsh on him.
I feel like he's older.
No, you're thinking of Devon Duvernay. No, it's the same player, just different names.
I'm definitely not.
Right, second in the division was the Cleveland Browns, 11-6, which, considering they went through 4 quarterbacks, maybe 5 quarterbacks at various different points,
was pretty. They went through 5, didn't they? A franchise record.
Yeah, and Joe came in to save them at the end. but then they got blown out by the Houston Texans in the wildcard game, 45-14, which I think was 14-all at one point, and then they just fell off a cliff, and the Texans
they got
steamrolled them.
Absolutely destroyed.
Bet365 have got them at 8.5 wins, leaning slightly under, which suggests that they're going to regress from last year and potentially suggests that Deshaun Watson's going to be fit. Third favourites for the division at 11-2. Notable ins: Jerry Jeudy, Deonta Foreman, Jamari Thrash, who was a 5th-round wide receiver, who I think I only included on this list because he's got a great name, and one of my favorite fantasy quarterbacks of all time, Jameis Winston. They're out. They're outs. I couldn't find anyone out, I suppose, notable other than Joe Flacco, who I don't know whether you count that as a notable out or not. They're early ADPs. Yeah, they're early ADPs. Deshaun Watson is all the way down. Can you believe this, considering how much money they gave him and the fact that he likes to run? Deshaun Watson is down at QB 23. Nick Chubb is RB 27. Jerome Ford is running back 41. Cooper is wide receiver 30. Judy's wide receiver 59. And then Joku is tight end 10. So the summary of that is that not many people are in on the Browns, I would think, because all of those are pretty low. They haven't got one stellar player.
Yeah, I definitely disagree with those ADPs. And I am loving picking up Deshaun Watson at his ADP. I think he could have become by
What leagues are you picking up Deshaun Watson
in? In redraft leagues, obviously for Dynasty, I'm not that bothered about Deshaun Watson. But for a 1-year gamble in redraft leagues, I'm more than happy taking a punt on Deshaun Watson at his ADP.
I would agree. I mean, I saw the best of Deshaun Watson, and right now at the Browns, it's pretty tragic. But when he's good, he's very, very good, and he at his ADP, it's a low risk, high reward pick. Yeah. I actually could say that about. I'm higher on Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper was he was in the teens last season, if I remember right.
Finished.
Yeah, I think wide receiver 30 for Amari Cooper is that's harsh.
That's really harsh.
I think he should be going higher than that.
He's a wide receiver 1 that he's proven in the league. Like, there is no way he should be that low, in my opinion. And you see the people that he's around, and it's like, Amari Cooper's got that 50-point game in him. We saw it last year against the Texans in the first game. Like, he has that in him.
I'm surprised he's not a bit higher because he did really well in the fantasy playoffs last year. Like, I'm surprised that people aren't drafting him off the basis of, he won me. He won me my league, and therefore I'll pick him a bit higher. But I don't know. He's another one I've never been. I think the problem with that is he finished as wide receiver 20, but he had a really big finish, which suggests for most of the year he probably was the wide receiver 30. Like everything you just said was true about him last year, and that's where he was. That said, like you say, the people he's going around, the 2 ahead of him are T. Higgins and Keenan Allen. I'd probably rather have Amari Cooper than them 2. And the 2 after him are Kirk and Adunze. So yeah, I'd probably rather have Amari Cooper ahead of them. I do like Kirk this year, but I don't know. The problem, I think, the problem comes back to Deshaun Watson and whether you think he can throw. Like, I think if Joe Flacco was there off the back of what he'd just done, and they knew it's that consistency. It's the same with Njoku. Njoku finished as tight end 6 last year. He's been drafted as the tight end 10. There's arguments for and against Njoku, but I think part of it is built in that you don't really know how good that quarterback's going to be. Whereas if those players, if you put all of those players with a Joe Burrow or a Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or a CJ Stroud, I think suddenly all of them jump up by 4 or 5 places because it's like, well, actually, I can trust it a little bit more. You're all saying Deshaun Watson's a good shout, and I can't really argue with it because of where he's going as a punt. But the fact that he's been drafted as the QB 23 in fantasy suggests that not many people think he's going to have a good year, and he hasn't had a good year for a long time.
It's not
That's what happens
just
when
that,
you
though,
sit
is
out
it?
2 years, isn't it?
Well, it's the fact that he had a slight injury and just refused to play. And he's got no reason to play because all of his money is guaranteed, whether he plays or not. So it is high risk. But the price you pay for him, I'll pay that every day of the week.
Yeah, but you're
just on the off
this is what I
chance
mean.
that he decides he fancies having a game.
You're taking a gamble on him, which is fine at his ADP. But are you happy taking a gamble on Amari Cooper at wide receiver 30 when you don't know whether Deshaun Watson's going to be throwing in the ball, Jameis Winston's going to be throwing the ball, or somebody yet to sign on that roster is going to be throwing in the ball? When you could
that's
take
the point, isn't it?
Christian Kirk, who's going to have Trevor Lawrence, who he's had Trevor Lawrence for the last few years and has delivered with Trevor Lawrence.
I'll argue this one for you, Ian. Jameis, if it is Jameis Winston that comes in, we know that Jameis Winston is going to launch the ball whether they are on or not. He goes for yards. He always throws for yards. He always throws for touchdowns. If Amari Cooper is that target for the day, he is getting peppered and it's well worth it. I know we're talking about Cooper, but Njoku's the one for me where I go, I don't like Njoku at 10. I think he should. I think he should be slightly higher. I think
I thought you don't like him. Then I was like, I don't like him.
I don't. No, I don't mind. I don't mind Njoku. I actually think Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, and David Njoku should be slightly higher on ADP. That's my opinion. I'm not.
Njoku is one of the reasons, and we're going to get. I mean, obviously, we'll get into rankings and everything, as the next few weeks pass. But Njoku is one of the. There's a couple of really good. There's a couple of high tight ends. We've already talked about one of them, Mark Andrews. I think everybody knows at this point I'm in love with Trey McBride, and I've been doing we've been doing mocks for our redraft and everything else. And Njoku is one of the reasons that I find it hard to pull the trigger on a McBride or an Andrews because I'm like looking at them and where they're going, and I'm not saying they're out of place, but I just whenever I do a mock and I end up with Njoku or Evan Ingram tends to fall down to that 8th or 9th place as well. One of them two, I like the look of my team more when I get to the end of it because I've got one of them two as opposed to picking a McBride or a Laporta or someone early on and missing out on one of those running backs or wide receivers that go in that range. And I think it could all backfire because Njoku's had 7 years in the league and he only turned up for about 10 games last year, and up before that he hasn't turned up at all. But
have you been re-listening to our podcast from the start where I've been saying don't draft a tight end until late because you can pick up a decent tight end. No. There's nobody that picks up tight ends. After those top 4 go, the next sort of 4 will fall that late down, or there's probably 4 or 5 this year with McBride obviously having another kind of season where you go, actually, this guy is the real deal. But after those 5, there's that gap of about 4 or 5 rounds where there's no one picks up a tight end, and then you kind of go, right, well, I'll pull my trigger on my tight end now before someone starts picking up a second tight end. Everyone will pick up the one tight end, and then the rest of them are, rounds 9, 10, 11. That's why I'm always in that bracket of I'm going to wait till round 9, 10, 11. I've got 4 wide receivers, 4 running backs, and a quarterback. You happy?
Yeah. But no, I haven't been listening to you. I came to that conclusion all on my own.
We didn't even listen to you when you said it live.
Do we want to talk about the running back room? Are you two ready to agree that I was probably right and that you were wrong about Nick Chubb?
In what way?
Well, it's the 4th of July, and I haven't heard one bit of news that Nick Chubb's even planning on going on running at any point or being back on the field.
Oh no, I have. I've seen videos of him training. So they are hyping him up, saying he's going to be good to go. So
who's saying he's going to be good to go?
The Browns.
Okay.
Nick Chubb.
Saying he's going to be good to go.
I'll wait until week 3 to have my victory dance about Nick Chubb, which I'm not happy about because I had Nick Chubb last year and it really hurt me. And I love Nick Chubb as a player, but he's not coming back.
I love Nick Chubb. I hope he does.
I
mean, obviously,
I really hope
I don't want the Browns doing well, but I hope Nick Chubb comes back and does well. And I think he will. I think he will. Because he's done this rehab before. He did his knee in college. And he's done all this rehab before, so he knows what it's about. He's not been injured again since college until last year. And I think he's going to be all right.
I think he will play, but I don't think he will be the Nick Chubb of RB 3. Like he's not going to have that same effect. But if you're getting down to who's around him in ADP,
I'll have a quick look for you. He's at 27, or he was when I did that list.
There's only one that I would consider over Nick Chubb, I reckon, and it would be Brooks, but we'll come on to him when we talk about them.
I thought you were going to say Damian Pierce then.
No. He's probably about 50, I reckon, Pierce now.
He's dropped a place. He's now 28. He's he's slap banging between Javonte Williams and Jonathan Brooks.
So I would take my punt on Brooks, who's coming off the same injury and he's a bit younger. Well, not quite the same injury.
It depends on the league you're doing. If it's Dynasty, you take Brooks. If it's redraft, I'll still take Chubb.
No, we're talking redraft, and I'm with H. I would take the punt on what Brooks could be. The ones, and then everyone after that, Eckler.
No,
don't know. Zach Moss, I would take. Jalen Warren, I would take. Devin Singletary, I would take. Trey Benson, I would take. I'd even take Tajay Spears and Brian Robinson and Gus Edwards. Blake Corum's a difficult one. Depends where I'm at in terms of running backs. And then you get to Zeke, and then you get to Zeke and Chase Brown, and then you get to Jerome Ford, who I would take above Nick Chubb. So,
I just if there's any of the old Nick Chubb, I'm taking Nick Chubb. I'm taking Nick Chubb, Jonathan Brooks. I'll be honest, there's not many there that I would be high on taking. Tajay Spears would probably be the one. But out of them, I'm taking my chance on Nick Chubb being fit, because hopefully by this point I've got 3, maybe 4 running backs already. So it's just a bench spot. And if he's again, as we said, what is it? Low risk, high reward. There you go.
Yeah,
got it in the end.
Well, you'll be glad to know, lads, that of all the leagues that we're in, I'll let you 2 fight over him, because I have no interest in him this year. So that's one less person. If you're next to me, there's one less person you need to worry about taking him before it gets back to you. In the last 90 seconds, is there anything we'd like to say about Jerry Jeudy, or is that conversation just not worth having?
I don't think it's worth having. Yeah, worth having best ball.
I will give you one. Bet365, I've got Jerry Jeudy receiving touchdowns at 3.5. Are you going over or under?
Over.
Over 3.5.
Yeah, I'd say over. Yeah, he's a player, like I just said. He's worth a punt in best ball. It is ADP. He is well worth a punt at best ball. I don't consider him probably being anyone's redraft target. I think he's way too low for that. So best ball, that'd be it.
He did show flashes at the Broncos, but it feels like a while ago now, and it didn't flash for long. So
yeah.
Broncos were kind of a dumpster fire, though.
Yeah.
The Broncos haven't been a good team.
Browns. Shut up, Paige. We're not talking about the Broncos. The Browns are going to finish 10-7 and not make the playoffs.
What, 10-7? Okay.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Sorry, B, cut you off there.
That's all right, mate. I was slightly ahead of time. Right, the Steelers. Here we go. The Steelers finished third in the division last year, 10-7, made the playoffs, lost to the Bills 31-17 in the most predictable wildcard result of the weekend. 2024, the bookies have got them at 7.5 wins, leading quite a bit over though. Fourth favourites for the division, which is another way of saying expected to finish bottom at 7-1, and their Super Bowl odds are 40-1. I put that in there for a reason, which I'll get back to in a second. Their notable ins: Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Roman Wilson in the third round, who's a wide receiver I like, and I think we all sort of quite like, and Cordarrelle Patterson, which only makes a difference because Arthur Smith's there. Their noticeable outs are Deontay Johnson. The early ADPs, they've got Wilson as the QB 30 and Fields as the QB 32. So take your punt on which one you think is going to win that job. Najee is running back 24 and Warren is running back 31. Pickens is wide receiver 29 and Freiermuth is tight end 16. I've been waiting for this to have my little Steelers rant. Now, I know we had a conversation several months ago about how I couldn't understand the signing of Justin Fields, and I'm even more confused now than I was then. And this is my point with the Steelers: is I feel like at some point we're talking about a great franchise, a great organization that's won many Super Bowls and has dominated for years, or had dominated at times for years, had their sort of dynasty in the past. And I feel like now they've lost their way a little bit and as to what the end goal is. And I feel like all they're trying to do is make sure Mike Tomlin doesn't have a losing record. And they seem to have lost the point that the end goal is to win a Super Bowl. And it feels like every year is just about how can we get to 9-8 so that we can continue this stat that Mike Tomlin's gone 17 years, 18 years, 19 years without a losing record. And to put a little bit more meat on that, you can look at Wilson and Fields and go, that's two good quarterback options. Whichever one wins that job, that backup quarterback is probably the best backup quarterback in the league. That's a good option. Neither of them are elite. Not anymore, anyway. But they're going to get the job done. And then at running back, they've got possibly, outside of the Lions and the Dolphins, and probably somebody else I've forgotten, they've got one of the best 1-2 punches in Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Again, neither of them are elite, so they're not as good as the Lions. They're not as good as the Dolphins. But they're both good. All four of those players are out of contract at the end of this year. So there's no plan beyond this year, and not only it feels like all they're doing is setting themselves up to prove everyone wrong. It's like they set up their roster so that the bookies go, you're going to finish fourth in the division and you're not going to make the playoffs, and they go, no, we're going to finish 9-8. We are going to make the playoffs, and we're going to lose in the wild card round, and then we're going to have the 20th pick in the draft, which is going to get us absolutely nowhere moving forward. And it feels like at no point has somebody gone to them, maybe you need to take a step back, bring in a quarterback that you can develop over the years, bring in a running back who's got some time, pick a running back and commit to him, pick a wide receiver and commit to them, and try and build a roster up so that in 3 or 4 years' time you might be able to have a Super Bowl run, as opposed to just trying to go 9-8. And this is where I'll let you speak.
Fair enough.
You all right?
A couple of points on that. Yeah, have a drink now, Pete. What did you say the over-unders was?
7.5.
Pile on that. Steelers don't have losing years under Tomlin. So they got it at 7.5. Pile on that, on the overs, obviously. Yeah. But you said those 4 players that are coming out of contract next year, your 2 quarterbacks and your 2 running backs. Tomlin's going to say to them, prove to me which one I'm keeping. And that's just going to inspire.
Yeah, but it's not under contract. But it doesn't work. If Justin Fields, so if Russell Wilson plays terrible, like Russell Wilson can for the first 8 games of this season, Justin Fields comes in week 9, and Justin Fields has had a little bit of time sitting behind. He's had a little bit of change of scenery and everything. Justin Fields lights up the league from week 9 onwards, gets them to the playoffs, finish 9-8. The roster's not good enough, so they get knocked out in the wildcard game, or they make the divisionals and then they get knocked out in divisionals. He's then a free agent. You can't. It's all right going, well, prove to me, because you don't have the rights to then just give him a contract. You have to wait and you have to bid with everybody else. And
yeah, but obviously,
like the Panthers will throw a ridiculous amount of money out of him, and you'll be back to square one.
So you're forecasting that Bryce Young does nothing this year again?
No, I'm just using them as an example. There will be at least 3 teams in the league where you get to the end of this year and haven't got a quarterback and haven't necessarily got a high draft pick. And if one of those quarterbacks lights it up and he's a free agent, it will be like the Kirk Cousins situation this year. They'll all be in for him and they'll be paying him ridiculous amounts of money, which the Steelers won't want to do. And they'll be back to square one. But they'll be back to square one with the 20th pick in the draft, as opposed to having the 3rd pick in the draft, because you've just written this season off and gone, well, actually, now we can take that quarterback, or we can take this player, or we can trade those assets. It's like they're just stuck in this hamster wheel of going round at 9-8 or 10-7.
Pete, you're turning red, mate.
I just don't understand it. If I was a Steelers fan, it'd really wind me up.
I think the Justin Fields pickup now seems a little bit odd because they didn't exercise that 5th year option. And granted, he was going to get paid $20 million, which in QB terms isn't a lot. So it makes me wonder, like, what was the point in giving up a 6th for him? Yeah. But as you said there, he's probably the best backup quarterback in the league this year. So it's the thing with them is they can easily extend these players mid-season. We've seen it been done. I know it's probably not the Steelers' way and things like that, but it makes sense to have somebody like a Justin Fields under contract next year, which, like I said, it doesn't make sense that they didn't pick up his 5th year option. That's, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense to me.
Because they would have had to pay $20 million, whereas they can try him out this year and then offer him 8 as on a prove it deal next year. Well, like Baker got paid $4 million last year on a prove it deal. They can do that with Justin Fields next year for $5 million.
Yeah, but on the flip side of that, there is we've said this before, we're no analysts or anything like that, but in terms of college football, there probably isn't a Caleb Williams, a Jaden Daniels, a Drake May coming out of college this year. Probably the best is going to be Quinn Ewers, who, in all honesty, could fall to the Steelers at 20. It depends, obviously, on how they perform this year in college and everything like that. I get that. But in terms of it, like, they have took a risk on Kenny Pickett. That's not worked out. Like, they'll just keep recycling what they've been doing since Roethlisberger started to, like, go a little bit. Like, they get Trubisky in, who was pants, Rudolph, who was pants, Pickett, who was pants. Like, they get them to what they need to do, but they're not elite. They're just going to, like Peter said, they are going to go around in circles, whereas Justin Fields has a bit more about him. So I would have taken the chance on paying him $20 million as a low-paid QB for next year.
So would I.
I don't know, maybe next year, because, they could have done it with the cap space going up. They could have done that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now they've got 2 QBs for less than what, $3 million?
Yeah, but then,
do you think right?
What have you predicted them to come? What have you predicted them to finish on?
11-6, losing the wild card round to the Ravens.
11-6.
Yeah.
Everybody we've talked about is having a massive winning record so far. Are you sure you've done this right?
Seriously not. Well, have you looked at the fixtures? Beat the Falcons.
Got it pretty rough.
Beat the Falcons. Beat the Broncos. Beat the Chargers. Beat the Colts. Beat the Cowboys. Beat the Raiders. Beat the Giants. Beat the Commanders. They'll get 1 win against the Ravens, 1 win against the Browns, and 1 win against us. Because that's what they do.
But again,
Pete didn't hear that. Can you repeat week 4 for Pete so he can argue?
Yeah, Steelers will beat the Colts. The Colts.
Just ignoring him. But they could go 11-6 if they lose in the wild card game again. It proves my point that they're not getting anywhere.
I know, and my forecasting just backs up your point. Like, they will get to the wild card round, like they usually do. Like, even if it's not 11-6, it might be 9-8. You know, but they will lose.
We talk ADPs quickly.
Yeah. We've spent 10 minutes on my round.
We're not talking about any of the receivers, have we?
I'm in on Pickens. There you go.
Go on. Who excites you?
Pickens and Roman Wilson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Their ADPs, both of them excite me. I'll be honest, both of them in Dynasty as well excite me. I think they've got so much upside.
Do you think Pickens can make that leap?
I feel like I've seen enough of him.
I think
I've seen enough of him to say,
it's just not. It's just not.
Go on, sorry.
I think he's already at that standard, but he's just not at the QB. And I think he just needs an above-average QB to make him take that next step. And Russell Wilson provides that.
I did not think we would agree on this, but I 100% agree with you. I've seen enough of Pickens to. What did he have? 1,000 yards last year with Kenny Pickett.
I don't know. He finished as the wide receiver 30. So.
And this year he's got a better quarterback. Let's face it, Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett. Justin Fields is a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett, but the difference is Fields has that rushing ability. I am probably higher on Pickens this year than I probably am on Zay Flowers this year.
He had 63 receptions, 1,140 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
With a poor quarterback.
Yeah. The 5 touchdowns is a big letdown, isn't it?
Yeah.
You go over 1,000 yards and you only score 5.
It's the catches that he needs. That's the concern. I mean, we all know what Arthur Smith's going to do. I see. I know you're talking about receivers. I'm growing on Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris to a certain extent because I think that he will just run the ball. That's what he does. He'll run the ball. He'll use both of them.
My problem is I've been burnt by Najee Harris that much that I can't anymore. Like every year I've drafted him, you get to week 10 and you're like, I'll trade him, and then all of a sudden he becomes this absolute monster and ends up with 1,000 yards, and you're like, why have you not done that for me for the first 10 weeks of the season? Like
he's a bit like that.
He starts so slow every year.
What I can't believe is Najee Harris is going into his 4th year. It feels like he's been in the league for about 7 years. Like, I can't believe this is just his 4th year. I feel like he's been. Like I say, I feel like he's burnt me 7 times, and I was like, he can't have done because he's only been in the league 3 years.
Najee's in the same pile as Javonte Williams. I'm not touching either of them.
If you had a choice, which one were you taking?
Najee. I'll take Najee. There's too much uncertainty around the Broncos' backfield. They've got loads of running backs there. And no one knows.
We're talking about the Broncos. We're talking about Steelers.
I know, yeah. What have you done to me there? That's you.
I do like the fry move as a, you're talking like if you're one of those people, I don't really like drafting 2 tight ends, but if you take someone high and you want a backup and you want to trade and you want to, I wouldn't draft a backup, but if I was taking someone high, but if you were, I quite like fry move as a shot, and I like him in best ball because I think he's shown in the past, and all of the arguments you just made for Pickett are relevant for Freiermuth. I think if he stays fit, he's shown that he can do it. So I think he could be worth a shout.
He should be higher than his ADP, but I'm still not picking him.
No, I do like Freiermuth. I do like it. And once the Steelers got rid of Matt Canada last year, Freiermuth kind of stepped up his game because he started utilising the middle of the field. So I think he's in for a bigger year.
Right, that's it then. Good episode, that lads. Wrap that
up. Nice one.
Right. Last but not least, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Terrible.
They finished, They finished bottom of the division last year, but still managed to get to 9-8. Back-to-back titles after back-to-back titles in 21 and 22. So in 2024, the bookies have got them leaning slightly over at 10.5 wins, which is very high. Second favourites for the division at 6-4, so not much to call between them and the Ravens. Notable ins. I can't say that word, so I don't know why I keep using it. No. Players they brought in: Zach Moss in free agency, and then in the draft, Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round as a wide receiver, and Eric Hall in the 4th. The notable out was Joe Mixon. Early ADPs: Joe Burrow is going as the QB7. Moss is going as RB32. Chase Brown is going as running back 40. Jamar Chase, the best wide receiver in the league, is going as wide receiver 4. Higgins is going as wide receiver 28. And Gesicki is going as tight end 31. Ian, I'm going to let you start.
I think Gesicki's about right.
31's high.
31.
Can I start?
Well, yeah, go on, H. You start.
Go on, you start.
Who is Joe Burrow QB7 on ADP?
Is that too high for you or too low?
Way too low. I am probably, outside of the Bengals, probably Joe Burrow's biggest fan. I've said it many times. For me, Joe Burrow is the 3rd best quarterback in the league, if not 2nd. You can argue between Burrow and Allen, and I'll take both arguments. Joe Burrow has all the weapons there. Well, he's got one of the best wide receivers in the league, one of the best wide receiver 2s in the league, and I'm taking punts on Yoshi Vashin best ball this year purely because he's got Joe Burrow as his quarterback, and if Yoshi Vash beats out Burton for wide receiver 3, I've got a decent chance here. Like I'm high on Burton. I think he should have been a wide receiver, round 2 wide receiver, high round 2 wide receiver. But I believe there's issues with his personality and all that other kind of trash that comes out. But there is not one player. The Bengals, for me, are the only team that could possibly go from worst to first this year. And it's an obvious statement because they've got an elite franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow. But every single one of their players, I would take a punt on. And to be honest, there's not one where I'm not looking at where I'm looking at their ADP and going, that's bad value. They're all great values.
You've got to remember, we're looking at fantasy ADPs and not who's the best quarterback in the league. Like, I think
real life production doesn't always equate to fantasy points.
But Joe Burrow proved it only a couple of years ago when he had his. I think he finished as QB4. But Joe Burrow is a better QB than 7.
In 2021, this is what you've got to remember, because he doesn't rush. In 2021, he threw for 4,600 yards and 34 touchdowns and finished as the QB7. That's what he's got to do to get to QB7 because he doesn't rush. So the way he finishes in a normal year, the way he finishes as a top 5 QB, he's got to throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. He could do that, but that's an incredible season. I'm like nobody's drafting Joe Burrow thinking that's what's going to happen. So plus you add in the fact that he's got now got a little bit of an injury record, and he's coming back off that. I agree with you though. I like him. I think he's about right as QB7 because when you look at the 6 that are going ahead of him, I can see how all of those 6 finish as the QB1 overall. I can't see how Joe Burrow finishes.
Okay, I'll flip this. Who QB1? I'm assuming it's Pat Mahomes, yeah?
No, it's Josh
on
Allen.
ADP. Josh Allen. Where's Pat Mahomes?
3.
Where did he finish last year and played all games? Where did Pat Mahomes finish last year? 17, 16?
8.
Never.
Close age.
He was the
never
QB8.
was Pat. I tried tried to trade him at one point because he was in the late teens. Like, I am higher up. Who's the other six that are the other four that are above him then?
He's got Josh Allen. It goes Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, Jackson, Stroud, Richardson, Burrow.
So I'd be taking Burrow over Stroud because Joe Burrow's proven it, and Stroud, as good of a quarterback as he is exactly the same as what you've said there. Doesn't rush.
That's the argument. It's whether you believe Richardson's the gamble in there.
Richardson is a high gamble. Richardson's high of a gamble because Richardson's never had a full season of football. He's always been injured, and he proved it again last year. It just seems
he's not had 3 full games of football on a full season.
Well, no, even in college.
How are you feeling about the Bengals?
How am I feeling? I'm feeling positive. As long as we can keep Joe Burrow injury free, I'm positive this year. I've got us 11-6, which is just slightly over the overs that you said at 10.5, and we're going to lose the divisional round to the Chiefs
in Arrowhead. I'm assuming
at Burrowhead, yeah. They'll have hope.
You have to say it, didn't he?
If you lose there again, you definitely need to stop calling it that. So.
I know, yeah. I am disappointed with Zach Moss's ADP, if I'm honest. What do you say? He was 31.
He's 32.
32. That's so low for an RB1, and he is the RB1. They've already said that. Chase Brown's the RB2. That's disappointing.
I think that's the only thing that's pushing him down is the fact that it's a little bit like Najee Harris and Jalen Warren if we take it back to the Steelers. Like if you take one of them out and replace them with Alexander Mattison, who clearly changed my opinion on, then the other one jumps up 10 spaces. And I think if you take Chase Brown out and replace him with whoever the Colts have got as a backup running back, Trey Sermon, then Zach Moss jumps into the top 20 easily. I think it's just that uncertainty of which one's going to win the job. How long has he got the job for? I think is there going to be a bit of a timeshare? But
yeah,
I am interested in your thoughts on Zach Moss.
Well, you'll know more than me, but he was solid when JT was injured last year. He showed a lot when he was replacing Jonathan Taylor at the Colts. So I was excited when we got him. I mean, it was obviously devastating to see Mixon go and Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd leaves a big hole. He was our go-to third down guy, and I'm hoping that Yoshibas or Jermaine Burton can kind of fill that void.
I don't know if there's anybody as high on Tyler Boyd as you are. I don't know if he's high. Just love Tyler Boyd as much as you did.
Not for fantasy, but for real game situations. If it was a 3rd and 7 or 8, you knew it was going to Tyler Boyd, and he has got some of the safest hands you'll see in the league. He was guaranteed first down if the ball was going to Tyler Boyd on 3rd down.
Is he like the Darren Fletcher of the Cincinnati Bengals? You really need to watch him and be a fan to see.
Yeah, it's the Michael Carrick.
No, Carrick was world class. Anyway, wrong sport.
Then in terms of tight ends, we don't use them. We never have. I do like Mike Gesicki. I think he's got a bit about him. He's got good banter. He's a decent lad, and he's a decent tight end. I just don't think he's going to get the volume too relevant. If you're going to draft a Bengals tight end in Dynasty, I would take Tanner McLaughlin over Eric Hall. Tanner McLaughlin broke all of Gronk's records in college. Tanner McLaughlin is going to be a beast if he gets used.
Slow burner.
Yeah, slow burner. But in Dynasty leagues, where I've been mocking, I've been taking Tanner over Eric Hall. Just my little hint for the future. Might not pay off, but that's what I'm doing.
And that's why you need a bigger bench.
That is nailed on Taxi Squad.
Yeah, which if you're not in our WhatsApp group makes no sense to you. So, Right. So I introduced Jamar Chase as the best wide receiver in the league because I think he is my number one wide receiver again this year. He was my number one last year. He's my number one this year. Do you lads disagree with that?
I don't disagree, but I also don't really 100% agree. I think he is class. He's going to have a better year than Jefferson this year because he's got that rapport with his quarterback. Jefferson's got a rookie quarterback. It might struggle, you don't know. So I'm taking Chase over Jefferson all day. I do really like Amon-Ra St. Brown.
About CD.
I'm not sure.
Don't say it.
I know.
Don't say it.
I know.
CD's the only one who challenges him for me, but obviously that's because I don't like Tyreek Hill. I think those.
Yeah, but
I think
history's against CD Lamb, isn't it? Because no receiver's ever gone back-to-back wide receiver one. So CD's up against it. He's got history against him. So it could be Jamar Chase this year.
Going back how long?
I couldn't tell you. There's records.
Antonio Brown must have gone wide receiver one. In fact, he must have been the overall number one player in fantasy a couple of years on the trot.
Probably not.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Jamar Chase would be my.
Someone might fact check me and at me at Twitter on that, but I've definitely seen someone state that no one's gone back to back receiver one.
Yeah, well, Jamar Chase would be my pick for number one, and I think it comes back to everything I said about him last year, and you saw it last season. He had that blow up game against the Cardinals, I think, and when he got 50 odd points and just set the league alight. Or set that game alight and just took it, and that was him and Burrow have got that connection. And I think if you get 17 games out of the pair of them, I could see Jamar Chase going for 2,000 yards and being the wide receiver one on the year. And he's the only one. And I know you don't like him, but CD Lamb is the only other one where I'm like, actually, I'd take him as an alternative because he's proven he can do it with Dak. I don't like their running game this year. I think they're going to have to come out throwing. Because they've got that. I mean, they don't even have a Zach Moss and a Chase Brown. They don't even have a Chase Brown to lean on. They've got nobody. So
no, they've got Zeke, and that's
we'll talk about the Cowboys another day. But Chase is my number one again. I'd love to have him in a dynasty league, and I don't think I have him in any. I think I've got him in one dynasty league, and I don't have him in any of my others. He's too hard to get hold of.
No, if Chase does what he says you're going to do, then T. Higgins owners will be devastated.
And
T. Higgins
once again,
are banking on Burrow spreading the ball around a bit.
Well, once again, I am a little bit. I think I'm high on T. Higgins as well. At wide receiver 28, I think he's a better shout than. I think he's a better shout than Amari Cooper. He's a better shout than Pickens. I'd rather. I know he's like the second choice on the team, but because of everything H has just said about Joe Burrow and how good he is, I would take the second shot on that team over not knowing who's going to be throwing Amari Cooper the ball.
Yeah, I think the only thing going against T is the fact that he's playing on the franchise tag. And the risk is that he does what AJ Green did to us, where he gets a slight injury, and he's like, no, not playing. So,
yeah,
not playing. I'm not risking my next contract for a slight niggle. That's the risk with T. Higgins.
Do you not think he needs to, because he didn't have a great year last year?
After last year, he needs to have a good year. Yeah, he does, yeah. Because AJ Green played on the franchise tag after a career year.
Yeah.
T. Higgins is playing on the tag after a very, let's be honest, it was poor last year. Yeah. Up until the Vikings game, it was bad. So yeah, he needs to play and he needs to have a good year. But then if all the volume's going to Chase, then he's gonna be.
I think that's it. If he just went into free agency now without a good year behind him, I mean, he's still going to get paid. Someone's going to pay him because he's shown he can do it. But I'm not sure you'd call him
Panthers will pay him.
Top level. Why? Panthers will pay him and Justin Fields just start building up a team of players that nobody wants. Anything to add quickly?
No. Enjoyed that. Cheers, Pete.
Nice. Right.
Nice one.
Follow us on all of the socials at JMD Pod. If you have a look on our Twitter and Facebook, you don't have to go back that far to find Ian's June power rankings. So get on there and have a look and give them a comment and see what you think of that. I'm sure we will have the July version of that coming out very soon, and we will flag that up as well. But the Chiefs did actually make it back to the top of the AFC ahead of the Ravens in the June update. So that was good to see. Yeah, like and share. Look out for. We will be doing the NFC South next, so look out for that pod dropping as well. And thanks for listening.